Okay, welcome back to the show, and I've got a great guest on the show today, currently in transit, coming from his own podcast, joining me today, Mr. Rory McAllister, one half of the Highlanders that you'll probably remember from WWE. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, my friend. How you been?
Doing good, doing good. Listen, as I said off camera, thanks a million for joining me today, man. Really appreciate taking the time out.
Oh, geez, not even a question, brother. You're good.
Yeah. Listen, man, I suppose like what we'll do is what I normally do is growing up, when you were growing up back in the day in Scotland, was wrestling something that you wanted to do?
No. If the answer to be real, no. I had no desire to be a wrestler. I did, however, want to be a boxer. From a young age. Not to say I didn't watch wrestling. Like I watched all the Sunday morning with all the British wrestling on and stuff. You look Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, Pat Roach, all those guys. And I enjoyed watching it. But from a young age, I'd always liked boxing. And then as I started growing older, guys like Mike Tyson came into play, which really kind of caught me on it. I started looking at the history of boxing and fell in love with guys like Joe Louis and all those guys, and just that was my direction, or I thought it was going to be at some point, anyways. But no, wrestling was never a thing I seen as being my life.
Yeah. And did you do any training in boxing then as a young man, or what kind of sports did you play?
I did know. Well, I mean, I played football like everybody else back home, but I did train in boxing. I trained with a guy called Charlie Kerr in Glasgow, and he was a fairly well-renowned um, boxing coach at the time. But Donny Hood, who was, I believe, the European bantamweight champion, was in there with him. But yeah, I trained him with him for a while actually before I moved, and I started training with other people over the country.
Hmm. And when you first started wrestling, did you wrestle any time in the UK before you moved over to Canada?
No, I never did. I had delusions of grandeur when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like apart from wanting to be a boxer, I just wanted to be, for want of a better term, I wanted to be famous
Okay,
and
yeah.
play the guitar and everything else. I'd put my finger in a few pies, as it were, and
Yes.
you know, none of them really came to fruition. And but I'd always seen myself as wanting to be something different, something a wee bit better. And one of my ventures had failed. I won't go into that. But I get
Okay.
back home, and I was kind of feeling bad for myself, to be honest. And I get back to my apartment one time, and my flat. I should say I've been here too bloody long. And my buddy was chilling out there, and I was like, fuck, I was soaking wet from work. I was freezing cold. And I'm like, man, this can't be my life. This isn't what I see myself doing forever. It's just this 9 to 5 grind. And he's like, oh yeah, what you gonna do? And Monday Night Raw was on the TV, and I was like, I don't know if I can cuss here or not, but
You can say
parentheses.
whatever you want, man.
I was like, fuck it, these guys seem to be having a good time. I'll do that. I'll become a pro wrestler. And he started making fun of me, and he told my other friends, and they made fun of me, and then my family made fun of me. The guys at work made fun of me. So 6 weeks later, I sold my car, gave up the lease in my flat, and I left and found a wrestling company to come my kids. So that was kind of where kind of things changed for me. You know what I mean? Once I made that commitment to become a wrestler, it was absolute for me. I'm like, you know what? If they're going to make fun of me, they're going to start talking shit. I'm going to go. I'm going to start doing this, and I did.
Yeah.
Moved over to Canada, and that's really where everything changed for me.
And why was it Canada that you picked at the time? Did you know people over there?
Ah, there you are.
Yeah. I was just saying, why did you pick Canada to go as initially?
Well, because sorry, move on here. Shut up. It seemed to be the place to be. I when I thought about take a seat. When I thought about wrestling and everything else, I thought about, guys like the Hart family, Benoit, Jericho, all those guys. And I'm like, well, that seems to be the place to be. That seems like Wrestling Central,
Yeah.
So you can see my dog excited. I'm back home. So I literally I found a training school, and I was moved over, man. And day one, I committed myself fully. That seemed to be the smart choice. I wasn't going to go there and do it half-arsed. That wasn't going to be. When I left and I sold everything, I left myself with a situation that if it failed, then I was going back to nothing. Like, I had nothing. That was always going to be what fed me to do it, is the fact that if I did quit, number one, I was going to go back to everybody making fun of me. And number two, I had nowhere to live. I had no job. I had no vehicle. I had nothing. So Canada at that point seemed to be ground zero for Rory.
Yeah, and it seemed obviously it didn't take you too long really to get even some dark matches on with the WWE. How did they come about?
The funny thing is that because I had no visa to Canada, I had no visa to the US.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, actually, I had no visa to the US, so I had to keep crossing the border.
Okay.
Back then, this was before 9/11. So back then, you could spend it was like $6, I think, for a 30-day visa, and I'd go back and forward. And in between training, we're working independence at that point. We're going all over Canada, all over the US. We got some inroads, and basically just started harassing WWE talent, which at that time was Dr. Tom Pritchard.
Yeah.
And worked with Tom Pritchard up in Vermont and New York and Connecticut and all those places. So I called him up and I says, "Hey, we're ready." And he's like, "You sure?" And I says, "Yeah, man, we'd like to kind of come and take a wee look, So he brought us in for the first one, which I believe it was Montreal. But then after that, we just lied to him. We're like, "Hey, Tom, we're in Long Beach, California, close to you guys." "Oh, stop by." We weren't. We were still in Toronto. Or we'd tell him we were in, Seattle, and he was good there. Or we were in. So we just lied. And Tom knew the story that I had nothing, that I mean, I was living $30 a night, 3 nights a week, just trying to survive and eat. So I think he kind of took a wee bit of pity on us at the start, but then he started bringing us in, and he gave me a match right out the gate. I believe it was with Rhino, I think. But just persistence, and the fact, like I said, I had no safety net. So I'm like, fuck it, what do I have to lose? They'll either say no, and then I'll keep doing what I'm doing anyways. I classed myself as a wrestler at that point because I was wrestling every week. I was traveling. I was constantly wrestling. I was meeting new people. So I guess at that point I was kind of a journeyman. Me and Robbie were,
Yeah. And they obviously, what was the decision then was there anything to do with them with you guys joining OVW then at the time, or was that just something that happened after these dark matches?
No, what actually happened was, say hi to Sophia. Hey, darling. What actually happened was we were doing all these matches, and I just kind of me and Robbie kind of get tired of it. And I pulled Johnny Ace aside one night, and I was like, "Listen, man, this is great. You guys are paying me $250 a night, which is more than I've ever had. You're bringing us in." I mean, it was almost like a job. It got to the point where it was every few weeks that we were there. I says, "But I want a job. I need to be able to hang my hat on this. I need to be able to settle down roots." And he looked me and Robbie square in the face and went, "I'll tell you right now, we're never going to hire you." And
right.
I was like, "Well, follow up, need some feedback, brother." And he said, he's like, "Listen, man, I could go to OVW. I could take 2 guys, put them in kilts, and call them the Highlanders, and the crowd would not know the difference." At that point, I had a wee kind of Fu Manchu mustache, and Robbie was clean. He looked real nice with a business haircut and a wee goatee, like everybody else in WWE. He's like, "Nothing stands out." And I said, "So what does this mean?" He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you 3 months. Go away for 90 days. Don't show your face. Don't call us. Don't do nothing." He says, "Come back then,
and it's your last chance. Kind of just bring something, you know. I believe at that point we were in Providence, Long Island, or I think it was. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but we drove back all the way back up to Canada, and I don't think we said more than a couple of sentences. We were both just kind of shell shocked, you know, that all this work and it was about to be shot down. And it took about 24 hours after we got back home, and I called Robbie, and I'm like, "Here's the deal, man. Like, we got to go back with something that's going to catch them, something they haven't seen in a long time." I went, "They've obviously been a Scottish tag team. That's new. They've had Scottish people. They had Piper." I says that we have to go in there, and the first thing people look at when they see us is, all right, those guys are Scottish. So, unfortunately, here in the great old US of A, when you say a Scotsman to them, a lot of people still anticipate kilts and everything else. And
Braveheart.
Fuck yeah, you know, like the most ridiculous thing. So I say to Robbie, I'm like, that's how we're going to go. We'll go in there as you know, these Neanderthal almost ancient Scots. I says, we'll wear the kilt with a wrap around it, like pugilists, you know, some fur. We'll put it on there so it looks like it came fresh off the mountains. And Robbie's like, well, you can't really grow your hair. And I said, fuck it, beards. Just massive beards. Nobody in WWE had a massive beard. And fuck, at that point, I couldn't even tell you who was the last person, really, you know.
Yeah.
So all the gear that we made, Robbie made the boots. Like, he actually made the wrestling boots. I made the fur rows. I made the fur that were around the boots. I made the wrist ties. I think it was for a total of $20 Canadian. We made all of the outfit for. And I said to Robbie, I'm like, this is what we wear when we go in. You know what I mean? Like, we go in there as Highlanders, and then they either take us or they don't. He was all for it. He was throwing in his 2 cents on everything that we had to do. And that was it. We rolled the dice. We went all in. And so we showed up at, I couldn't even tell you where it was, mate. I honestly couldn't tell you. It's somewhere in America. And we walked in, and Johnny Ace is like walking by, and he stopped dead in his fucking tracks. And
Did he recognize you?
It took him a second. It took him, and he stopped. He looked just dead in the tracks, and he went, "Highlanders?" And I went, "All right." And he's like, "Stay right there." And he literally ran away. Fucking Robbie looks at me and he says, "We're just about to get kicked out." And I'm like, "All right, I guess so." And he came back with Vince. And Vince is like, "Hold on, Sophie." Vince is like, "Did you show up to my building looking like that?" And we went, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Johnny, put him in a match." And he's like, "I want to see how they do." So he put us in with, I believe it was The Miz and Matt Capitelli.
Right.
God rest Matt Capitelli. What a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
And Robbie looks at me and he's like, "All right, what do we do?" You know, he's trying to think of spots we could do. And I'm like, "Let's just kick the fucking shit out of them. Let's just go in there and just, you know, show them we can shoot, show them we can work, show them we're not nervous, show them we're not scared." And Robbie was all about it, you know. So we went and did the match, beat the piss out of them, which was good because if you beat somebody up and they beat you, then it looks like they actually won something. You know what I mean? I've never been a big fan of, hey, you guys are working enhancement talent, and then you go in and destroy them and go, "Yeah, what did you just do? You did fucking nothing." So we went in there and made them work for it. And Vince loved it. He was very happy. And yeah, we get a call probably less than 48 hours later that there's a contract for us both.
Yeah. So you guys were obviously super committed to this from you leaving home. You wanted to go for this from Robbie making the gear and everything like that. So did they stick with the initial gear that you guys made then as well?
Yeah, we stuck with everything. Robbie, by the way, just not just me giving up a country and everything. Robbie had a very, very good job, doing very well for himself and his family. And when we got together, Robbie also gave up his career and everything. He was making very good money. He had a young son at the time, Trey. We're talking young son. He was probably 2 or 3 years old, and he sacrificed everything just based on the fact we could do it. But no, we got to OVW. We weren't there very long. and we kept our gimmick there. I was not very. I loved everybody at OVW, but I was not very happy with the way it was panning out. Pretty much from then, I wanted to go home. I'm like, fuck this. This is terrible. We were given some really bad advice. I didn't enjoy it at all. But we did this skit. It was, like I said, all those guys were friends. And I love them to this day. I still talk to them. But Punk was running roughshod over everybody then. Paul Heyman was running the show. And they'd cut me and Robbie. They'd stop using his in-ring talent, and we were just doing these backstage stupid segments because we could talk and do stuff on the fly. And Mr. Kennedy, good old Ken, he was looking for Punk, and he threw into the back, and he's like, have you seen Punk? And I cut this ridiculous promo. Like, just ridiculous, and broad accent. I'm like, there was a Punk to the left and a Punk to the right. The violence was fucking disgusting. And I did, and he went and seen him, went, oh, he's right over there. And it was so stupid. We got a phone call from Ed Koskey the next day, and he's like, loved it. We're bringing you guys in as these funny, and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But that was how it started. Basically, they brought us in based on a couple of stupid promos, and the fact that they knew we could work, regardless of what was happening in OVW, they knew we could work. So that was when they brought us in, full gimmick, and then tried to take that away from us at some point, and I was not having it at all. I was not happy with that.
Yeah. In terms of the promos, then when you got to WWE television, were they literally handing you guys scripts, or did all your creative freedom go out the window at that point?
Yes and no. They did hand us scripts, but then they let us loose. To Ed Koskey's testament, there was a lot of stuff that was just kind of us on the fly, just fucking around. Over to Liberty Island and stuff like that. That was just all us. Cutting the promos and meeting everybody, and the same when we went into Times Square, and then when we were in Titan Towers, that was just us just fucking having a laugh. I mean, like I said, I don't know if either of us were extremely happy with the company from the get-go. It really wasn't. Sometimes you chase a dream and you don't realize what the reality could be, and I don't think both of us were that, swept away by it. So they gave us a little bit of creative freedom,
Yeah. Was the reason that maybe you didn't like it as much as when you got there, was everything too planned all the time there, or was that the real problem compared to working on independence and various other places?
Yeah, big time. That was a hard adjustment, especially with having so little ring time at OVW. It was very hard for that, I was never trained to call everything backstage. I was trained by some real old school guys, and I was never trained. I mean, I was trained by Smith Hart, Waldo Von Erich, and a handful of other these old timers, and very hard adjustment for me to be like, okay, so I'll take 3 steps back, we'll do this, I'll shoot you in. But that wasn't how I worked at all. I never liked it very much. But then we were working with a team at the time, and Cade and Murdoch, that's all they wanted to do. Every single step had to be planned and everything else. And then we're trying to adjust to this comedy gimmick also. So there was a lot of variables there that just made it for, I just wanted to wrestle, man. There was nothing else I wanted to do. Sure, tell me what the hard cam is, I'll give you the finish, but it's not just dependent on what you want. There's a lot of stuff going there. And hindsight should have been a little bit more forceful with what I wanted, because it was my career, and I gave some of that up just because of where I was at and everything else. So, yeah, that was a lot of it.
I know you said initially when you were talking to Vince McMahon and he loved the way you guys showed up to the arena and all that stuff. Do you have any stories about working with him hands-on?
I never had a problem with Vince. I always kind of funny. There was times that I'd actually sat and drank with Vince backstage. I came back from vacation one time and had a big bottle of brandy and we sat and drank it. I never had an issue with the man at all. He liked the fact that we would always go to him with stuff, He knew before, like when we were working like Rhino and Tajiri, we'd worked William Regal and Dave Taylor and all those guys, and those were guys that did not like to call anything. So he knew we could work. But then we had some good times too, like on our debut night where we were sitting in back and like slapping his arse and stuff like that. And he was always a good. I know he's been through some controversy right now, but I like the fella,
Yeah. No, I always like hearing, like, I've heard both sides of Vince from various different guests, and like my opinion on him is like he's done like massive things for the wrestling business, and that'll never be taken away from him.
I find it very hard to be mad at a guy that took me. I was living in a car, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were a freaking escort driving all over North America and whatnot. And this man took me to, I think 6 months after signing, I bought a house. I put down 50% on my house, my cars, my motorcycles, all this stuff. Like, how can you get mad at a man that allowed me to do that? I went from eating I had cat food one time for a meal, for a while. And then I could walk into any mall and buy anything in that mall. I can't get mad at a guy for that. Regardless of what happened in my career, that's not Vince's responsibility. That's mine. Sure, there's politicking, but that's my career, man. I don't give anybody else credence on my career, just me and Robbie.
Yeah. In terms of WWE, people always say locker room leader, and they mention someone like The Undertaker. Did you see any signs of that when you were there? Was he kind of keeping people together back there?
I was on the Raw brand
for
the most part. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that me and Robbie were working Raw, SmackDown, and ECW almost every week.
Yeah.
Great for the fucking payday. So yeah, I mean, I got to work with Undertaker in that capacity. But for me being a Raw guy, we were squarely under Mr. Cena. John was the face of the company and everything else. He was, for the most part, a great locker room leader. There were some instances that we never really agreed on, but John was always open to have conversations about it. But Hunter was still active then too. Sean was still there. So I was basically under John and then those two. But then I had worked on SmackDown, so Taker he was a good dude, man. I can't think of a bad thing to say about that guy. And I'm sure there's a million bad things that people have said, but again, dude, my career there was, I never really have a beef with anybody.
Yeah, I heard he was a good guy to have a few beers as well, a few whiskeys.
Yeah. Well, over here it's that fucking bourbon stuff.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah, I was in America in April. I found it very hard to get a decent whiskey. Obviously, me being from Ireland, I'm a Jameson guy.
Right. Nah, I'm an Oban guy, single malt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it smells like home. You know what I mean? Like Scotch, fermented through the peat. So when you crack the bottle open, you can actually smell. There's a lot of fragrances remind you of home a wee bit,
Yeah. During your time there, and like I don't want to dampen the spirits here, but the Chris Benoit, obviously that thing happened in between when you guys were there. Like, how shocking was that? Like, I never heard your perspective from everything on this story. Like, and how did you find out about it, and what was the mood like around the place when all this came out?
I like Chris a lot. I had a lot of really good conversations with Chris.
Yeah.
And I watched, somebody not that long ago told me to watch, I don't know if you guys get it back there, it's like Beyond the Ropes or something they call it. Or
yeah, it's Dark Side of the Ring. Is that what it is?
And
yeah,
it says to watch it, and I was like, I don't really like that shit. And I watched it, and it was a Chris episode, and I'm sitting here with my kids, and I just broke down. Chris was always a good guy. I remember when he'd stop to get his son. We'd go on overseas tours, and he would stop and get his son just to bring him to the show to spend just an extra few hours with him, And we did the thing for Vince. Vince was supposed to get blown up in a limousine. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, of course. That happened the week before, which was fucking mental, really.
The week before, and we were all supposed to be there for Vince's funeral, I believe it was Corpus Christi. And I was hanging out with Edge and Viscera, and somebody came up to us. I can't remember who it was. It might have been JR, because we had black shirts on for the funeral, and everybody wanted us to have. Everybody's got to wear a white shirt and black tie. So well, fuck. So we jumped in a rental car, and we're heading here, and I'm sitting beside Vis, and he's like, Rory, I never liked this. I don't like this, man. He's like, anytime we do some kind of angle with Death shows up. He's like, I don't like it. I remember playing his day, him saying that.
Wow.
And we went back to the arena, and I just remember Malenko came out, and he went straight to Vicky. But Vince had called us out of the ring, and he got up into the ring. But before he said that, Malenko came down, and he went over to Vicky, and I've never in my life heard a scream like it. Like, she just inconsolable, man, you know. And we knew Chris had missed the pay-per-view the night before. Obviously, he's a big guy, he's a big name.
Very uncharacteristic. Yeah.
We were under the impression that his family was sick and everything else. And Vince is in the ring, and he's like, "Hey, so we did a wellness check on Chris, and everybody's dead." And dude, we're in the middle of an arena here, and there's riggers and lighting and pyrotechnicians and everything else, and you could have heard a pin drop, man. Like, I think we all breathed in and nobody breathed out for about 30 seconds. And I was sitting with Randy, and he just kept shaking my shoulder. He just kept pushing my shoulder and pushing my shoulder. And he's like, let's go fucking smoke. Let's go fucking smoke. And we went out to have a cigarette, which we shouldn't do. It's nasty. Kids don't do that. And dude, both of us just broke down, and then Lillian showed up, and she kind of fucking lost it. And, you know, wasn't long after that, they said they were going to do a tribute show. They said they could either stay or we could go home. And, 99% of people went home. And there was me, Robbie, Taker, Hunter, I think Shane Helms, I could be wrong. So I say to one of the guys in the building, I'm like, here, man, there's $50, go buy some beer. You know, and we're just going to sit here and watch the show. And they had been recording people all day, you know, to do the sound bites and whatnot. And it was fucking rough. And I don't know what it was, and I didn't want to think about it at all, man. I didn't. I looked at Robbie, and I'm like, what if we're doing a podcast for a guy who just killed his fucking family? And I didn't want to think that, but how could you not, you know? And he's like, shut the fuck up, and don't even say that.
Yeah.
And the next day, we're flying back, and I'm on the same plane as Randy. I think we flew into Kansas City, and Randy goes for coffee, and he comes walking back, and on every screen in the center of the hub, the airport, you know, murder, suicide, and dude, Randy just lost his shit. He literally just lost his shit and fucking ran out the airport. He was home anyways, you know. I was catching the second leg, and that was kind of how that whole thing happened, man. Like, that was my experience of it, you know. It was tough on everybody because nobody wanted to believe it, man. Nobody did, and but you kind of look back and like, people I was talking to, and then, you know, when I'd go in and I'd, hey, Chris, what's going on? He seemed a little bit more withdrawn. And I heard that later from a lot of people that he'd become more withdrawn in the locker room. And then they immediately, and this is the part that, I don't know if this is something I'm supposed to talk, who gives a fuck, I don't work for them anymore anyway. But, you know, they completely just deadlined the guy. Take him out everything, take him out everything, take him out everything, take him out. Mm-hmm. Here's my thing, man. This is the same company that talks about mental health and mental wellness all the time. When they did Chris's autopsy, he had the brain of somebody in their fucking 80s with Lou Gehrig's disease. Well, his brain was... My rationale for it, what I can kind of get by, and what I tell a lot of people who always ask me, and you always get those assholes, well, he's a fucking murderer. His body physically did the act. There wasn't Chris mentally that did that. And I know that because I don't know what his relationship was with his wife, but I'd seen his relationship with his kid and it was beautiful, man. And so for me, I look at it like physically, yes, mentally, no. I think a lot of people that knew me would probably think the same way, but I don't know. I can't speak for their opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that will probably go down as probably the darkest day you worked there, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, not even close, man.
Yeah. But if we flip it back again, what is your proudest moment of working there?
I've got a couple. First one was obviously the deep friendship that I ended up having with Roddy Piper.
Yes.
I ended up having a real beautiful friendship with that guy. My first time going back home after all the bullshit I dealt with in North America, and I mean, there's a lot of bullshit, trust me. After all that, my first WWE overseas tour was back home in the UK and Glasgow, my hometown. And it was me, Flair, and Piper against the Spirit Squad. And he gave us, him and Flair wore my kilt. I still have that kilt that Flair wore, actually. It's hanging up in a shadow box in my wrestling room. He did this amazing introduction, and I came out, and the crowd just, it was the wildest thing that I just ended up breaking down, obviously. I don't think I'd been home at that point in like 7 years.
Wow.
So there was that, and then I think, and Robbie agrees with this, probably, my camera's all over the place, I'm sorry, mate.
Good, man.
Probably my proudest moment in WWE, or my most memorable, we were in Durban, South Africa, and it was me and Robbie against Dave Taylor and Paul Burchill. I actually, believe it or not, just spoke to Dave Taylor about this yesterday online. We were talking about this. And we were in Durban, South Africa, and the weather was brutal. It was an outdoor show, but it was a massive money show.
Yeah.
And the guy that had paid for the show was getting worried that he wouldn't get the full show in, so they put Cena on early in hopes that if, things took a shit, the crowd still got to see Cena, because at that point he was huge.
Yeah.
So they held us off, and then they're like, okay, the weather's holding, like, Highlanders, your main event. I'm like, holy fuck, this is main event in a WWE show? Okay, cool. And I think the African people understood the history with the Scottish and the English.
Yeah.
So Taylor and Paul Burchill, there you've got two prominent English wrestlers. Now you've got the only two Scottish tag team there. And dude, we did everything. This match was probably a good 30 minutes long, all on the fly, completely on the fly. Obviously, Dave Taylor was the ring general. What an amazing worker, dude. Probably the most undersung wrestlers in this country. He's worked here for so long. Yeah. But an amazing gentleman. And what a match, dude. Like, we blew the fucking rafters off that place, to the point where we got back onto the crew. We went from the ring straight onto the tour bus. And Cena and Shawn Michaels were like, what the fuck did you guys just do? Just had fun, man. That was probably the greatest moment, man. I loved that. That was my first and only main event.
Yeah. When you look back on things, then I know people ultimately talk about when Robbie went on to TNA and all that stuff that happened. Do you remember when you talked to him after that, and did you guys go back to the arena together after that happened, and what was the reception like? Did you get any heat from it?
I didn't. I'd been hurt. I was at the go home show for Royal Rumble. I tore my pec and blew my shoulder out completely. Yeah. So I had this kind of tear that Cody just had, but I blew my shoulder out at the same time. I needed full reconstruction and everything else, and we had to cut away a half of my pec muscle. So I wasn't even going to make it to Mania. But what happened was, I do canvas art. That's some of my art back there. I know you can't really see it. I do canvas. I like to paint. And I got a phone call from Stephanie, and she's like, hey, my son at that point was only about 4 weeks old. I had my surgery 2 days before he was born. And Stephanie's like, hey, man, we're doing a charity auction doing at WrestleMania. I know you like to paint. Would you like to come down and try and sell some of your artwork? And I'm like, well, if it gets me down there, man, that's cool, yeah. So I packed up the family. We go down there. And I get there, but I'm still treated like a talent, obviously, even though I'm hurt. And Vince did his big grab the brass ring speech, which was just absolute fucking horseshit, to be honest with you, because you can only grab what they're willing to hand out.
Yeah.
So he did that speech, and then he brought up the whole thing. He's like, nobody goes to, I get it, where we're at, you know, our competitors here running shows, nobody goes to the show. I didn't intend going to the show, and I don't know why, but at that exact moment, I pretty much knew Robbie was going to go, only because I know he'd been having, he wasn't happy there either, and especially with me gone. You know, he did a couple of good matches, apparently a really, really good one with Ron Killings that got him noticed, but at the same time, like, he still got his family back in Ontario, and they were going through a couple of problems there, and he'd asked for time off, they told him no. So I'm sitting in the hotel room with my boy, man, feeding him, talking about feeding him, you'll get that in a second, talking about feeding him, and I get this phone call, and I pick up the phone, it was fucking Johnny Ace again. Johnny Ace a piece of shit, by the way.
I heard.
Oh, absolute dog shit. I'm so glad to get fired. Anyways, he starts going off, your cousin was just seen on live TV for TNA and blah, blah. And I know it probably wasn't the right time. I started fucking dying laughing. Like, I am barely laughing on the phone. I said, I'll meet you at the bar. So I go down to the bar. Taker's there, Finley's there. Johnny Gase comes over to talk to me, and he's like, you don't have a problem with this? And I went, Johnny, I don't know what I can tell you, man. I've got one arm right now, and I've got a kid. I'm like, I'm just trying to get by, you know? So I sat there with Harry Smith and his sister Georgia for a little bit, and we had something to eat and a drink. And eventually Robbie came back, and dude, Fit lost his shit. Fit was irate. Now, obviously, you know, I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, he came down here and, like, he made a lunge, and Taker actually stopped him and went, Dave, calm the fuck down. Because Robbie had the balls to do what he did. Well, he did it on purpose or not, and I'm almost certain he did. He had the balls to do that, and he walked right back into the bar to face the music. You know, he didn't try and didn't do nothing else. He walked right in there, and Fit went in, and Robbie stood his ground. I mean, fucking Robbie's beat that shit. I've punched Robbie in the face before. You know what I mean? He can take a shot, and he stood there to take a shot like a man. And I think Taker really respected that from him. You know what I mean? And he's like, Fit, calm down. He's like, the boy fucked up. He'll pay his penance. He's like, leave him the fuck alone. And that was it. I went back, you know, back home to do my rehab and everything else. And yeah, we kind of go from there, man. That led up to our last match, which I was really happy about.
Yeah. So you were happy at the time to get out of. Was it just trying to get out of there and just continuing wrestling elsewhere? Is that what you wanted at the time?
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. I just wanted to wrestle again, you know. And I remember because the last match was in Richmond, Virginia, and I got up that morning. At that point, I'd been off work for 10 months. I'd been rehabbing, but I hadn't just been off work for 10 months. My son was born weeks after I had surgery, and I had, 2 days after, and I had raised him this whole time. I did every midnight feeding. I did, you know, anywhere we went, he was with me. I went to rehab, he was with me. And I was rehabbing with the Cincinnati Reds, the baseball team here. And he was always there. He became my shadow, you know. And I remember getting told I had to go back to work, and I'm like, all right. And I went into his bedroom, and I leaned into his crib to give him a kiss, and I just lost it. I didn't want to leave him.
Yeah.
So we get to Richmond, and the first person up to me, Shad, came running up, you know, and big old fucking hug from Shag. Man, I miss that guy so much. And he said, we're working tonight. And I went, this is probably our last match. And he's like, oh, you guys are good. I went, well, there's heat there, and then there's other stuff there. We did the match, and, you know, sure, it was, they put it as a kind of squash, and Shad didn't want to do it either, neither did Jay.
Yeah.
I even called it a little bit early, actually. I'm like, fuck it, I'm done. And I called to go home like 2 minutes too early, but who fucking cares? Then we kind of went from there, man. And I knew regardless that we were done. Johnny had been lying to me for months at that point. You know, the whole time he'd call me up every week, twice a week. Well, hey, how you feeling? How's everything going? Can't wait to get you back. We're going to put you in a program here, and blah blah. You guys will be fine. And I'd say to him, I says, well, Johnny, what about the whole Robbie thing? Oh man, don't worry about that. We'll deal with that later. And just bullshit me, blowing smoke up my arse. You know what I mean? I later found out that he was the one behind it all. He was the one trying to get his shit canned and everything. Apparently, Vince and Steph weren't even really into it, but it was all him, you know. And a week, we get back, and a week before we're due to fly out back to TV again, I got a phone call, and he's like, "Your cousin's was on the other line. I just let him go." And I didn't give him a chance to say shit. And before he said that, I looked at my girl at the time, and my son, because we were driving to get pictures taken, and I says, "Yeah, I guess I'm done then. I guess I'm going the same way as Robbie." So I don't know what he's going to say. He's probably going to fire me anyways. I don't know, or if he was going to say, you know, I have no idea. But I didn't give him a chance to say shit, and that was it for me, man. Like, you know, we were.
Would you have stayed without Robbie there? That's the question.
No.
So it didn't matter what he said.
No, just on pure principle. I went over there, and I literally had what I had in my pocket, you know. And here's a man in fucking Derek Graham couch, Robbie McAllister, my heterosexual life partner. That dude took me into his home, fed me, got me work on farms here or there. We trained together from fucking dawn till dusk. We traveled together. We did everything. Now, I don't think for a second he was going to say, "Hey, we've got a job for you anyway." But if he had said that, no, there was no way I was going to go with it, Robbie. Not for 1 second, man. My morals are too strong for that, you know. And I wouldn't. Money has not been, although I need money, it's never been my guiding force in life. And I let that come between me and my cousin because I consider him blood. I love him like family.
Yeah, and to this day, you guys are still always together and doing stuff. What's life in the present day like for you now? What are you up to these days?
Well, her brother is now 15 years old almost, and he's just a big horny fool. And then I've got you one right here that you met earlier. Say hi.
Hi.
She's all nervous. So I get that. Now I've got a career in aviation. I help run the flight line.
Looks like a minion.
Okay. I help run a flight line. I'm happy with my life. I'm a single father with 2 kids, you know, and I love it. I love my life. Gets a wee bit lonely sometimes being so far away with home and nobody else here, but you know, I'm blessed, man. Robbie's up in Nova Scotia. He's doing great things up there, man. He's actually really he stepped away from wrestling for a long time. He just got back into it a few years ago, and he's doing really good, man. You know, he's up there pretty much running roughshod over Nova Scotia and everything else. So life is good, man. I talk to Robbie all the time. We're always laughing and joking, and you know, we had some stuff that we both had a couple of issues with each other that were unsung and hadn't been. Still loved them, you know, but we had a couple of issues, and we sorted all that out a while ago. So no, he's still very much a big part of my life, man. Always will be.
Could we ever see the two of you guys in that ring one more time?
Robbie's in stellar shape. Apart from a little grey hair, I haven't changed a bit in the past years. You know what I mean? Like, everybody says to me, like, "You look the exact same." I mean, it's that fine Scottish skin. You know, I don't let it see sunshine, so I don't wrinkle. If I would absolutely love to do something with the Viking Raiders, because everybody keeps doing that whole thing. I mean, first it was, you know, when the Wyatt family showed up, they're ripping you off your gimmick, which they actually ripped off Robbie's gimmick completely. Robbie had pitched that gimmick to WWE for quite some time before they gave it to Bray.
Yeah.
He was working that whole gimmick over in the UK with Dixon, doing all the Butlins events and all this other stuff, and working shows over there. And so he was kind of like it was like, I think he called himself like Bayou Bobby or some shit, you know. Mm-hmm. But it was 100% his gimmick.
And then, of course, the Viking Raiders. Yeah, I was just going to say as well.
showed up, and everybody's kind of saying, "Honey, you need to sit down, okay?" Everybody's saying obviously the similarities and everything else.
Yes.
And I think those guys are amazing. I really do. I enjoy watching them work. Big Todd. I mean, Jesus. I think he's Ivar Todd Smith. And I mean, for such a big fella, he can float about like a butterfly.
Oh yeah.
So if I was given one last run, I would like to go in there and do something with them. A handing of the
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
A handing of the fur, brilliant.
Yeah.
Man, just before we wrap up today, you were recording your podcast earlier. Do you want to tell us about it and what it is you guys do?
Yeah, it's actually it's three guys in a bar.
I actually turned it on earlier, and I was just coming back from work, and the only little snippet of 15 seconds I heard was you talking about setting up an OnlyFans.
Well, so dude, ultimately what the show is, it's three guys at a bar, just drinking and having fun, and being guys, because that's the thing now. It's not okay just to be a fella. You've got to identify as something, and you've got to be something, and you've got to be sensitive to this and everything else. And like I tell you, I see it in the news, I hear it from certain people.
Here's something you might find interesting. Fellow Scotsman Graham Souness got in a bit of hot water over here yesterday for a comment for a comment he made on TV in front of a woman that was there. They were analyzing the soccer game yesterday, and Souness turned around and said that was a proper man's game. And people are giving out that he said it was a man's game while there was a woman present. So that's the world you're living in.
Jesus Christ. Let me ask you, was there 22 men on the field?
Yes.
That's a proper man's game then, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? The whole thing. We've went so far liberal, it's not even funny. And that's pretty much what our podcast is. It's okay to be a fella having a beer with your friends and talking shit. Because there's a difference between talking shit and being political. I don't want to be political. I don't want to talk about anything else. If somebody wants me to call them a lawn chair, they identify as a lawn chair, you're a fucking lawn chair. If it makes you happy, I don't care. But it doesn't stop me from being me. You can't change that. So the show is me, my friend Matt, who's an Air Force veteran, and then my buddy Nathan, who's a comedian / musician. And it's just us sitting there drinking, and talking shit. And it's a lot of fun. It's called the Wood Podcast. It's for Wake, Urinate, and Dominate. So it's WUD. Because you don't have to be one of those fucking crossfitters or, somebody that wants to walk across the nation to dominate your life. You can fucking do it regardless of what you do, man. You can dominate eating a fucking McMuffin if that's what you choose.
And what I'll do is I'm going to pop the link of your podcast underneath this video, and I'll just say thanks a million, Rory, for your time today, man. Best of luck with everything in the future. And thank you so much for your time, man.
I appreciate you, brother. You take care of yourself.
Thanks, man.
See you, mate.